Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Town Hall with the Honourable Tim Houston, Premier of Nova Scotia. My name's Marla McGuinness, and I will be your moderator this evening. Some of you may have joined us 2 weeks ago for our first Town Hall. We heard from Nova Scotians across Nova Scotia, from Sydney all the way to Yarmouth, and many communities in between. But we know there were many questions that we didn't get to, so we're back for round two. For those that are joining for the first time, let me tell you a bit about the style and the format of this evening's Town Hall. This evening, several Nova Scotians across the province received invitations to join us by phone. Those that have chosen to participate will have the opportunity to ask Premier Houston their questions directly. If you're participating by phone and you have a question you would like to ask the Premier, please hit *3 and you will be added to the queue. We're also broadcasting the Town Hall live on NS Government Facebook page and the YouTube channel. Those viewers will also have an opportunity to participate. You can email your questions to nstownhall@novascotia.ca. We have an hour together tonight, so grab your tea, settle in, and we'll take as many questions as we can in the amount of time that we have. For those on the phone, now is your opportunity to hit *3 to ask your question. While we're waiting for those questions to come in, Premier, why don't you tell us a bit about what's been on your mind since we were here 2 weeks ago?
Sure. Thank you, Marla. Hey, folks, thank you for joining us again for our second Town Hall. As Premier, I know that I need to be listening to Nova Scotians every day that I'm in this role. I value those interactions. I believe very strongly that the solutions to our province's most pressing challenges lie with you, the people of this province. You know what will work for your families and your workplaces and your communities. You know what will work, and I want to hear your ideas, your solutions to make the province the best it can be. Last time we did this, we had a great discussion. Everything from energy to healthcare. There was a great discussion about the cost of missed appointments. When you don't make your appointment, there's a big cost to the system. So we had a great discussion last time. I know tonight will be great as well. So for those on the phone, please press *3 to be put in line to ask your question. If you're watching online, you can email nstownhall@novascotia.ca. You can send your question an email or press *3 to get in line. So before we get started, I want to take a few minutes to talk about the number one challenge facing Nova Scotia right now, and indeed the country: healthcare. For decades, our system has been in crisis. Our hospitals have aged. Our technology is outdated. We're one of the last places in the country still here in Nova Scotia, still using paper charts to keep hospital records. Too many of our healthcare providers are overburdened and overwhelmed, and they've been burning out for a long time. But I've spent the past year, almost year and a half, I guess, working with my colleagues across government to slow the negative momentum we've been experiencing in the healthcare system. We toured the province, listening to healthcare workers, hearing directly from them, looking them in the eye, and they shared their experiences and they shared their ideas. And we listened to their stories and we listened to their ideas. And it was these interactions that drove the development of the Action for Health. This is the strategic plan to fix healthcare in Nova Scotia. We created the plan and we got to work, embracing virtual care and making it free and available for everyone on the Need a Family Practice waitlist, recruiting doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers, making historic capital investments to open more emergency department capacity and build more beds, expanding the role of professionals like nurse practitioners and pharmacists so that they can treat Nova Scotians for more of the illnesses that they present with. We recognize CCAs by addressing their compensation and offering free tuition to encourage more Nova Scotians to recognize the opportunity for a career as a CCA and to make that available to them. And it worked. It's working. It is working, folks. We provided thank you bonuses to full-time healthcare workers and recruitment incentives to healthcare workers who want to come back to Nova Scotia. We're updating our technology so our system can finally come into this century. We provided tuition rebates for people training to be paramedics and created a license to help them get on the job more quickly. We did all this and so much more to slow that downward momentum that we talk about. And this brings us to today. And I can tell you what healthcare looks like right now in this province. Yesterday, there were 1,785 Nova Scotians who visited an emergency department. 314 people were admitted. This past Friday, 283 surgeries were performed. Last week, EHS responded to 2,174 calls and the average response time was 24 minutes. During the month of February, there were more than 5,600 virtual care visits. Almost 4,000 people visited a pharmacist for expanded services. So we understand what is happening in the system, and we can see how the system is responding. This helps us focus, and you can also follow along. We publish daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly data on the status of our healthcare system on our Action for Health website. I encourage you to visit it and see what's happening in our healthcare system. It's how we know where our challenges are, and the challenges are still very real. This is how we know where the challenges are, and what we need to do, what we can do to address them. It's how we are accountable to you, how we are accountable to Nova Scotians, and it's how we know we are making progress. So I'm personally 100% laser focused on giving you a healthcare system that serves your needs. I'm very, very focused on this. It will take time, but we are making progress. Every day we're moving the needle just a little bit. There's a lot of needle to move. But every day we're moving it just a little bit. I know there's work to do. That's why I need to keep hearing from you with your ideas. It's why I'm so pleased to be holding this town hall today and more in the future, and other interactions that we have on the street and elsewhere. They're so helpful to me. Tonight we have Nova Scotians that are participating by phone. I'm excited to start taking their questions. We have them following on online. Send your emails in. I'm excited to hear from you. So if you're listening on the phone right now, press *3 to be put in line to ask your question, or send an email to nstownhall@novascotia.ca. I look forward to hearing your questions and ideas and solutions for an even better Nova Scotia. So let's get started, Marla.
Great. Okay, I'm seeing lots of people come in on the phone, but let's take a question from email first. So we have one that's come in from Terry Burrell. Terry asks, how about housing for nurses coming from out of province? Will there be any help to find housing for nurses when they arrive in Nova Scotia?
Terry, thank you for this important question. For sure, we know the housing challenges we have across this province right now. We have significant housing challenges for sure. We're building more homes right now in this province faster than we have in decades. We're working with a settlement agency to help healthcare workers specifically, which you referenced. We'll continue to work with agencies like that. But look, we know there's a lot to be done. We're looking at ideas around modular homes. We're making investments. We invested $8 million recently on the modular homes to make sure we have some modular homes for healthcare workers. So this is a great question, Terry. It is a real issue. It's a challenge. Happy to hear from municipalities or other community groups that have ideas from this. We want to work with you. We want to partner with you on that. But we did make an $8 million investment in modular, and we'll continue to make those types of investments. Thank you, Terry, for that question.
Great, thank you, Premier. So let's go to the phone line now. We have Judy from Halifax, and Judy has a question about healthcare. Judy, go ahead with your question.
My question is, I really like the idea of this referral system that came in on Friday for surgeries. But what happens to all the people that were referred before this system was initiated?
Thank you, Judy. This is an important question, and this is part of, I talked about off the top, modernizing the healthcare system, more using technology where it makes sense, and this is a centralized system, so that when somebody is referred to see a specialist or referred further, for further consultation, it would go into a central system. That way, people would be able to see whether it's the family doctor who's doing the referral, whoever it is, would be able to see, gee, if I send you to Dr. So-and-so in this community, the wait list is this long. But I see Dr. So-and-so in another community has a wait list that's a little shorter. Which one would you like? It will help us. It will help us move people faster through the system, and it will give people more information about what their what options they have, I guess. So we're moving this, going forward. We'll be moving with new appointments when we get it fully up and running. It's still, there'll be a few kinks to work out, no question about that. But we're launching that, and then we'll also be bringing in those people who are already on a wait list for a referral somewhere. So this is a good thing. Thank you, Judy, for highlighting that. It is something that hasn't been covered that much, but I have a great deal of optimism about that. It will help us move people faster through the system to get them where they need to be for their appropriate level of care. And also there will be people who say, they might be in HRM And they might say, look, I'm okay to go down to the valley, or I'm okay to go, to northern Nova Scotia. I can get up there if it can get me in quicker. So it will just help us better utilize the resources. But it's using technology to make sure we help people. So it's a great question. Thank you for pointing out that new system, Judy.
Thank you, Premier. So for those that are participating by phone, don't forget it's *3 to ask your question, *3, and then you'll get in the queue to ask your question. We're going to go now to Terry from Wolfville, who has a question about power bills. Terry, go ahead with your question.
Hi, I'm concerned about the rising power bills and how they just keep going up, and there's no relief that's going to happen with that. Like, are they going to just be allowed to keep continuing to rise the bills?
Thank you, Terry. Boy, this is something that's on my mind for sure, and on the minds of Nova Scotians. So the UARB sets the power rates. They have a process. They're an independent body. They're not part of government. They're the kind of an independent oversight on power bills. So power bills, people will remember that I wasn't pleased with the UARB's decision on the power rates, on the arrangement that they struck with Nova Scotia Power. We did put some legislation through the House last time. It was referred to as Bill 212. Bill 212 had if not for Bill 212, power rates are going up. They're going up for sure. I feel that every day when I talk to Nova Scotians and the impact it has on families. But they would have gone up more if not for Bill 212, which kind of puts some guardrails around what the UARB could decide. So let me say this. Thank you, Terry, for raising that. It's on my mind every single day, along with the cost of living, the cost of power. We want a utility in this province that we can be proud of. We need a strong utility. We need a strong utility that provides reliable power at a fair price. That's my ask. Reliable power at a fair price. And on both of those scores, there's been issues in this province. So this session of the legislature right now, we have a bill that's going through the House. The legislature is sitting right now. We'll sit for a bit longer. There is a bill that's working its way through, which would increase the fines that Nova Scotia Power would be liable to pay when they don't provide reliable energy. So we're doing what we can to hold our utility to account. But listen, the cost of living is a major concern, and the cost of our power rates is front and center on that. So thank you for raising that, Terry.
Thank you, Premier. Next question we have is a topic that's been on many people's minds lately, the RCMP. We're going to go to Shirley from West Hants, who's going to ask us a question about the RCMP. Go ahead, Shirley.
Thank you. Mr. Premier, I would like to know, what are you going to do about the RCMP? I've always respected them with great pride, but now, since the Portapique massacre happened, I don't. I feel they need to be held more accountable, and they need to be more open with their information. So I'm asking you, are you considering provincial police and getting rid of the RCMP?
Well, thank you, Shirley. And of course, with the release of the report from the Mass Casualty Commission this week, I was there when that report was released, and our hearts go out to the families, the survivors, and those impacted by that incredible tragedy. For sure, we can't change what happened, but we have to do everything we can, take every step we can to prevent it from happening again. So, the Mass Casualty Commission made a number of recommendations. It's 3,000 pages, and there's a lot of good in there. So we're working our way through those recommendations. We're carefully considering what's possible. We want you to feel safe in your community. We want all Nova Scotians to. We have to do what we can to make sure that every Nova Scotian feels safe in their community, and we have to move forward in a way that honors the families and the survivors. So we take that report. There's a couple of recommendations in that report that I would share right away, because I think they're timely and they're important to speak to your question. So the first one is that the federal government and the provincial government work together to establish a committee who would be responsible for making sure that these recommendations move forward. And that's really important. That's the accountability. The commissioners were very clear. The Prime Minister was there, I was there, and the commissioners were very clear with us. Over to you, government, to make sure the positive change happens. And I spoke to the Prime Minister and some of the federal ministers afterwards, and they accept that. They accept that, and I accept it too. So first thing, put a committee together to make sure that things move forward. But one of the recommendations is to review policing in this province. And that speaks to the entirety of the province, but certainly rural policing. So what I would say to you, you asked very specifically about a provincial police force, and what I would say to you is I don't want to presuppose the outcome of those discussions. We will do the research. We will listen to Nova Scotians. I would say everything is on the table, including a provincial police force. I don't know that that's where it will land when we do all the work, but you have to feel safe in your community. So it's sad for me to hear that you don't right now. I take that to heart. So we'll take the recommendations of the commission forward, and one of them is to review how we're policed, and we will do that. I promise you that, Shirley.
Let's move to the northern area of the province now. We're going to go to Amherst, where Sandra has a question about health care. Go ahead with your question, Sandra.
Hello, Premier. My question is, it's a sort of a little story about my daughter-in-law is a doctor in BC. They recently have received about approximately $100,000 raise a year because of the fee structure change and how they're paid for their patients. If they're a complex patient, they get paid more, etc. Is there any chance that would be doable in Nova Scotia? My family are born and raised in Nova Scotia, but living in BC. I would love to have them back here.
Well, Sandra, we want nothing more than your daughter to come home as well. We know that those that have a close connection to Nova Scotia and the communities, we know that they're, if we can get them practicing medicine here, they're more likely to stay. They want to be here for sure. This is part of the driving force behind the new medical school at CBU. The new medical school, it is, that medical school, when it's fully up and functioning, will graduate 30 doctors a year. And it's focused towards Nova Scotian students and students, graduates that want to work here with and offer a return to service. So we know that in the long term that's where it needs to go. In the short term, I'd say a couple things. So we started recruiting on day one. We know we need more healthcare professionals across the whole spectrum for sure, including doctors, family doctors, specialists. We know we need that. So we did recruit 148 doctors last year. That's a net gain of 74. Obviously, some leave, you have some retirement, so it's a net gain of 74. So we have a lot of work to do, and we know that I spoke to the attachment to community is part of it, but you're right, compensation is part of it as well. So right now we're working with Doctors Nova Scotia on options around compensation. We're always focused on improving allowing our doctors to focus on patient care. There's a lot of red tape in the system, useless forms that they have to fill out and time waste and stuff like that. So we're very focused on getting that off their plate so they can focus on patients. But to your point on the compensation, I think those negotiations are going. We're never going to have the highest paid doctors in the country. We're just not. But we have to be fair compensation and be able to offer other things in terms of a quality of life. So I hear you on the compensation aspect of it, Sandra, and I'd love to team up with you and see if we can get your daughter back here providing health care to Nova Scotians. But compensation is certainly a part of that for sure, and that's not lost on me.
Thanks, Premier. I see lots of great questions coming in here. If you have a question, you can hit *3 to get in the queue. Next, we're going to come back to Halifax. We're going to talk to Linda, who has a question about roads. Go ahead with your question, Linda.
Hello, Premier. We have our street coming up. There's like sinkholes and the pave is terrible. And I often wonder if when they pave roads, if they have extra left, if they, put it down here. It's just terrible. But the garbage and plow come up, and they're saying, the city's saying it's a private road, but still, I don't know. They said if the garbage truck and plow couldn't come up, then they'd pave it.
Well, Linda, roads, for sure, especially in the rural parts of the province. So there's an expression that says all politics is local, and nothing's more local than the road you drive every single day. So we know the impact that a bad road has on people. It just brings you down, driving a bad road, damage to your car and stuff. So we hear you on that. This time of year is particularly hard for a lot of roads, for sure, with the spring. But we know the investments that are required. So I would say the discussion around what's a private road and what's not, that's always a topical discussion as well. We have a lot of roads in the province. We have a lot of roads that are maintained by the province, some by the municipalities, and some are private. So we try to stay in the right lanes, as it were, on those things. But on the roads that the province is responsible for, we have, I'm very proud on there's a fund for rural roads. It's called the RIM. That fund, we doubled it our first year in office to recognize there's a lot more investment that's required in the RIM fund. And in this year's budget, that's kind of working its way through the House right now. We added another 14 million to that RIM fund. So I think it's somewhere. It's gone. It's doubled, almost tripled since we come in. But order of magnitude, we can get the exact numbers on that. But I would say on that and the rural funds, that investment is going up significantly. And then of course on our larger trunks and highways, very significant capital budget from the province this year, somewhere in the range of $1.6 billion across all capital projects, and almost 498 million of that would be for roads and highways. So yeah, we hear you. This is we have a lot of roads in the province, and a lot of them need some TLC right now. So we're putting the money behind that through the RIM fund and through the other funds to hopefully get to as many roads as we can. Roads and bridges, I should say. A lot of investment required for bridges. So thank you, Linda, for raising the important issue of roads. Now, a couple things I'd say before we grab the next one. I do want to go back to Sandra. And Sandra, I'll join forces with you. If you want me to send an email to your daughter, you want somebody to reach out to your daughter and talk about the healthcare system in Nova Scotia and where it might be going, happy to do that. And Linda, you mentioned the private road. So I want to make sure if we can provide some guidance on whether it is actually private or is a province or whatever. Happy to take a look at that. Send an email to premier@novascotia.ca. So reach out, folks, and we'll try to get back with some more answers for you.
Thanks, Premier. Lots of opportunities to keep the conversations going. Next, we're going to talk about healthcare again. We're going to go to Kenneth, who has some comments on healthcare. Go ahead, Kenneth.
Hello? Hello?
Hi, Kenneth. You're live with the Premier.
Yes, the Premier. Premier, I have no complaints. I was in the hospital. I got well looked after. I just want to say the last Liberal government was terrible. Your government is doing an excellent job, and you're getting it from a big socialist. My father, Russell Cunningham, served in the legislature from 1945 to 1956. For the CCF party. And I just wanted to let you know that I was always a socialist, but you're doing an excellent job in Nova Scotia. And I'm proud to say, I'm proud to be one of your supporters now.
Well, Kenneth, that's very kind. Thank you so much for that, for sure, and thank your father for his service to Nova Scotia. There's a lot of work to be done. Certainly, we focus on the work that needs to be done. I tend to drive very hard. I feel I take the issues and the challenges we face very personally. So I push very hard because, I want Nova Scotians to have the best. And sometimes sometimes I'm guilty of not lifting my head up and acknowledging where there is progress. And we have incredible people working in our healthcare system. We really do. They want to deliver the best care, and it's our job as a government to support them. So thank you for acknowledging the care that they provided in your case and the work that they're doing doing every single day. Kenneth, I really, really appreciate you sharing those kind words. Thanks for reaching out tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Premier. And for those that are joining us on the phone, please don't forget to hit *3 if you have a question that you would like to ask Premier Houston. We're going to actually jump to an email now. So we have an email from Christine Robertson. She says, "Hi, Mr. Houston. Can you please explain why your government accepted healthcare funding in exchange for giving the federal government our health information in the form of a health digital ID? Thank you."
So thank you, Christine. This is a really, really important question. So let me be very clear. No digital ID. Nova Scotia not participating in any digital ID, and we won't share any personal health information. It's just not going to happen. We do share information with the federal government, like how many surgeries were done, how many people are on the wait list. This is not personal information. We will never share your personal information. And to be fair, the federal government's never asked for it. So thank you for that. Thank you for that important question. No digital ID.
Thank you, Premier. Next, we're going to talk about a topic that I know is very near and dear to your heart, the Cape Breton University Med School. So Mary has a question about that. Go ahead with your question, Mary.
Yes, it's my question now, but it was asked me a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, I don't know the answer to that. So when you called, I thought, okay, there's the guy to ask. Now, is the med school going to have students just from Nova Scotia, or are they going to accept students from overseas?
Thank you, Mary, and hopefully I can answer it. But we can be a good team, you and I. You pull all the questions together, and then we'll work on the answers. But this is a great question, and this is, I kind of alluded to it earlier. This is what really got my attention when CBU came forward talking about the opportunity for a med school. I think it's really important that Nova Scotia students, we have great students in this province. They're as smart as anywhere. Nova Scotia students that want to be doctors, they have a chance to do that here in Nova Scotia. So the focus is on Nova Scotia students. That is the focus. And the students that are accepted to that medical school will sign what you call a return of service agreement. So that means that they will agree that when they're done, they will be practicing medicine here in this province. So we know we need more doctors. That school, when it's up and running, will accept 30 a year. We'll graduate 30 doctors a year, and they're focused on rural Nova Scotians. So this is a game changer. Certainly for Cape Breton, but for Nova Scotia as well. This is a real game changer, and it's going to be a real opportunity. And I've told this story at the announcement. When I was at the announcement, two sisters approached me just afterwards, and one of them said, "This is my sister. She's a healthcare professional, but she wants to be one of the first students in the CBU medical school." And I said, "Well, isn't that great?" I said, "Was it always your goal to go to medical school?" And she said, "Not really. But if I can do that right here in Nova Scotia, right here at CBU, then I'm going to do it. And I want to be a doctor and serve this community." So that's the type of student that we're looking for. And I think the CBU Medical School is going to be a great thing for Nova Scotia. Thank you. Thank you, Mary, for filtering that question through to me. Really appreciate it.
That was a great story, Premier. Let's go next to Antigonish. We're going to talk to Doug next, who has a question about carbon tax. Doug, go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. I just had a question about your view or what you'll do for people in Nova Scotia, basically, about the proposed carbon tax on July 31st or 1st.
Thank you, Doug. Timely question. I am a fan of doing everything we can to protect the environment. I absolutely know we have an obligation to future generations. We have to protect our environment. We put through some legislation with some very aggressive goals on doing better by the planet and how we can do that. We put forward a plan to the federal government about how we can work with them, what Nova Scotia can do to protect our planet. The carbon tax doesn't protect the planet; it just doesn't. And we've made that argument to the federal government. The carbon tax doesn't protect the planet because, especially in a rural province like Nova Scotia, we have to drive. So to penalize those who have to drive, it doesn't help the planet. You still got to drive. it just penalizes them financially. So same with our climate. We have to heat our homes. It's not an option. So we wanted to look for other ways to green our grid, and we asked for their support on, the hydrofoil, for example, the green hydrogen. Support us in offshore wind. Support us in really innovative ways to green the grid that will help the planet. Carbon tax won't do it. Unfortunately, the federal government did not accept it. They didn't care. They said the carbon tax is their thing. They want everyone to have a carbon tax, and there will be a carbon tax because the federal government has dictated it. We don't agree with it. And now, just this week, the Parliamentary Budget Office came out with their report, and it showed very clearly that the carbon tax, there will be a rebate. People will get a rebate. The federal government likes to talk about that. You'll get a quarterly payment meant to offset the additional tax you pay. But the Parliamentary Budget Office came out this week and said that rebate doesn't cut it. Nova Scotians are going to be out of pocket. So how about that? We're going to be out of pocket, and we're going to be no further ahead in helping the environment. I don't get it. I don't support it. I've mentioned that to our federal members of parliament who are kind of driving the car on this one. It doesn't work for Nova Scotia. It penalizes Nova Scotians. Cost of living is high already. Let's not do this. Let's work together on how we can really come up with innovative ways to protect the planet, like some of the ways that I've mentioned. So I'm not on for the carbon tax, Doug, and most Nova Scotians won't be, because they actually care about the planet and they know there's a better way to do it. Thank you for asking that important question.
Thank you, Premier. We're about halfway through our town hall here this evening with the Honourable Tim Houston. If you have a question for our Premier, please hit *3 now and you'll get in the queue to ask your question. Next, we're going to go back up to Cape Breton. We're going to go to Brador. We're going to speak to Basil next, who has a question about income tax brackets. Go ahead with your question, Basil.
Yes, good evening, Premier. My name is Basil Crane. We've spoken before on numerous occasions before you became Premier, and I'm wondering why you are not doing something about the income tax that Nova Scotians have to pay. We pay the highest amount of income tax in the province of, or in the country of Canada, and why you can't do something with the indexing with that income tax bracket.
Well, Basil, it's
you don't want to do it something.
Well, want's an interesting word, Basil, but it's definitely an important question. What I would say is our focus is on healthcare, and if you look at the budget that we've tabled, significant investments in healthcare, deficit budget. We're spending more than we're taking in. We're spending that on healthcare. We're spending that on roads, as was mentioned earlier. We're spending it on services to Nova Scotians, education, community services. So we're taking a certain amount of money in. We're taking that in through the tax system, and we're spending more money out, right? So our focus is on healthcare. We're committed to fixing the healthcare system. We believe that by fixing the healthcare system, that's a benefit to every single Nova Scotian. Help us grow this province. So that's our focus. The alternative would be to, I would say, kind of ease off on the healthcare spending a little bit, and indexing the tax brackets. That's a choice. You're right. Indexing the tax brackets would, that has a cost too. It's a couple $100 million a year. So I was always very clear, and I'm sure I hope I was in our discussions that you talked about that. I definitely want to get to a point in this province where we can lower the tax, taxes. I definitely want to get there, and we will get there. But we won't get there until we fix healthcare and until we grow the economy. So fixing healthcare, paying for the fixing of healthcare, those are my two objectives. So I'll just leave it with one thought on this, because the budget this year is $14 billion in spending. $14 billion in spending and services to Nova Scotians expect. Not that long ago, that spending number was $12 billion. The reason we can spend more is because we are taking more in. We're taking more in because we're growing, because our economy is growing, our population is going up, and people drive economies. So the more, as we grow our population, and growth comes with challenges, we've talked about that before, but as we grow our population, we grow our tax base. we have more people paying into the tax system, and as we get, have more people paying in, then at some point in time we'll be able to address the tax rates. And I desperately want to get to a point where we can lower the tax rates. Many people will know I'm an accountant, I'm a CPA, that's my background. So I understand the impact of higher taxes. But I know we need to keep that focus on healthcare right now. So it's a fair question. I want to get there. I really do. But we have a couple of things we have to do in this province to keep it moving forward before we get there. And that's just the sad reality of where we're at.
Great. We're hearing lots of great questions, and we know there are a lot more out there. So if you're on the phone and you have a question, please hit *3 now to get in the queue. Next, we're going to come back to healthcare again. We're going to talk to Russell from Halifax, who has a question about the VG hospital. Go ahead, Russell. There? Okay.
No, yes, I'm sorry. I thought I took the question. Premier, I've worked at the VG. I'm retired now, but for 35 years. The VG was, as you know, was a flagship of the Atlantic provinces, and with Dalhousie being the feeder for the doctors and the nurses, I was just wondering, like, we're in the process of redoing that, taking that building down and building a new hospital, but that costs many millions of dollars. I was wondering if the other province would want to chip in, and we can consolidate, like, the heart surgeries and pulmonary care, blood, and all the research in one area, and have them come in to our system and help pay for that.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Also,
yeah, okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Russell.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead with your next one.
No, the next one is, I noticed there was a lot of parking anxiety down there. Like, I used to come in from Herring Cove Way, and I used to park down around St. Mary's and walk about 3 blocks or 4 or 5 blocks or whatever it was. And it was just absolutely, well, that's just the nature of the game in Halifax. So. But free parking for the doctors and the nurses and the maintenance people would alleviate a lot of stress, I think.
Yeah, so...
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so okay, a couple things. So thank you. I can't imagine the change you saw, Russell, in 35 years of working in our healthcare system. I'm sure you could share swap a lot of stories with me on that one for sure. But thank you for your service. So interesting ideas. So yes, our healthcare infrastructure is aging. We talked earlier about the aging technology and the opportunities to use more technology to better deliver service. We also need to invest in our buildings and our infrastructure. It's pretty sad, the state of some of them, for sure. You only have to walk in them. So we announced earlier that the plan for more, faster, more beds to get it done faster. We inherited a plan that talked about investing in our capital infrastructure. This plan wouldn't have seen any kind of, let's say, lights flicked on or doors open for almost 10 years. It was almost an all or nothing. So we can't wait 10 years, right? So we started to look at how could we do it in waves, where you open the first bit and then build on that and then build on that. So that's a bit of a change for me. And actually, the initial plan was built on a decreasing population, and that's not happening in this province. And I never want to be part of a province that plans for decline. I only want to plan for growth. So on the plan for the investments are there, more, faster, for sure. And now you raise an interesting point on who can chip in and pay for that, right? So we've been trying to get the federal government to chip in. There is an agreement already. Like a lot of the Halifax, we're fortunate in this province. We're home to a lot of specialists, and there are agreements with the provinces where people come from other provinces, the Atlantic provinces, to get particular procedures and surgeries and services done here in this province. And there is an agreement where we pay back and forth, and that's an agreement that is always worth looking at it. So I kind of take your point on that. You kind of are taking it a bit further and saying, well, maybe could they chip in for the infrastructure? And that's an interesting idea. I don't know if my fellow Atlantic premiers would think it's maybe as interesting as you do, but I certainly think it's an interesting idea. And the parking thing that's real too. I do hear from healthcare professionals that talk about the nuisance, but also kind of the just the cost of it can be a bit of a slap in the face in some places. So that's a couple interesting ones there. Russell, happy to take those away and look at that. And they all speak to supporting our healthcare workers and paying for the fix of healthcare. So anytime somebody speaks about those to me, I'm interested, and I'm certainly interested in your ideas there. Thank you, Russell.
For anyone still looking to ask a question to Premier Houston, hit *3 on your phone now to be added to the queue. Let's head to Middleton next. We're going to chat with Alice, who has some ideas for healthcare. Go ahead, Alice.
Good evening, Premier Houston. I just had a suggestion. In order to attract more doctors to rural areas, perhaps the high school students, when they express an interest in entering into medicine, they could be teamed up with a practicing rural doctor and get an exposure to the whole field, and that might encourage them to continue on. And even more importantly, it might encourage them to choose to practice in a rural area when they complete their training. This might also work with nurses as well.
I love it, Alice. Probably work with people in the skilled trades as well. So I'm a big fan of helping students, presenting opportunities for students to find their passion. And that's really what you're talking about, right? So co-op programs through high school, even junior high, just giving kids the opportunity to see what different careers are out there. These are incredibly important parts of a young person's development, just understanding what's available. And I think you're absolutely right. If you can attach them to a community, but to a career in a community. In your example, attaching a young person and letting them kind of work with a doctor and understand what a doctor does and how a doctor's life looks like, then that would form a bond that might help keep that young person, that future doctor, in a community. So I love that idea. I love that's something that I would definitely talk to education and the Department of Youth, Minister of Youth and stuff, and see if there's a way that we can do that. Just attach kids to opportunities so they can understand, because maybe some young person in your community meets a doctor and decides, I want to go to med school, and they go to med school at CBU, and that's exactly that's the goal right there. So thank you, Alice, for that, for sharing that idea with us. It's a great one.
Great. Lots of great questions coming in, but lots of great ideas too. So if you have a question, an idea, a suggestion, you can hit *3 on your phone now to get in the queue to chat with the Premier. Let's go to Seabright next. We're going to talk about power. Let's talk to Malcolm. Go ahead, Malcolm.
Well, I always hear my wife complaining about the power bill. She tells me it's very exorbitant, and so I don't know if there's something you could do about that. It might be difficult. But the other thing that is really affecting me is that we live on the sea coast, and we have storms in here fairly regularly. Well, when I say regularly, heavy winds and so on, and about 3 or 4 times a year. And whenever they come, we always have an out in power. And so the TV is down, and the telephone is down, and all that sort of stuff. And I'm not hearing anything being done about that. And I don't know if there's something that could be done about that, to let the people know that they're being considered. I think it's because the electricity wires are above ground, and maybe they could have a plan whereby every year they do a certain amount, and eventually this would get done, because keeping the wires above ground, doesn't really help.
Well, thank you, Malcolm, and let me assure you, your wife is not alone in expressing her concerns over the power bills, for sure, and you're not alone in raising your concerns over the reliability of energy. So, look, having a strong utility we can be proud of that provides reliable energy at a fair price. That's all we're trying to achieve. So. We're doing what we can to hold Nova Scotia Power to account on providing reliable energy, and we're doing what we can to hold, to make sure there's fair prices. So the prices are set by the UARB. The UARB is an independent board that sets the power rates. Nova Scotia Power would apply to the UARB for the power rates that they want. The UARB would have a hearing. And, people would present before them as to why they thought that power rate is too high, too low, whatever. They would present their case, and the UARB would ultimately decide. On the reliability side, I take your point. And right now, before the legislature, we have a bill working its way through the legislative process, which would increase the fines that Nova Scotia Power would be subject to when they fail to deliver power to you. We want them to invest in reliability. We want them to be every year making investments to strengthen their lines, or as you say, burying some of the lines. These are all things that we want, a strong, responsible utility to be doing. Taking those steps to invest in reliability so that you have your power there. The storms are increasing in frequency. So we know the same issue is around telecoms and cell phones. We need to make sure that our telecom providers and our power utility are investing in reliability. We need to make sure that happens, and we're trying to do that. It's active with me in my office with the legislation we put forward. But I absolutely hear I hear your wife, and I agree with her on the price, and I hear you, and I agree with you on the reliability.
Thanks, Premier. Let's chat about a topic we haven't talked about yet. That's forestry. Willie from Halifax would like to ask a question next. Go ahead with your question, Willie.
Well, thank you. Yes, thank you, Premier. And I guess I have to commend the government for saying that their main focus is healthcare. The thing that concerns me the most is the fact is when we're focused on healthcare, there's many things that are inextricably linked to healthcare. For example, burning coal and clear-cutting our forests. And so I'm just wondering, is our eye on the ball of the environment? I know you say you care about the environment, but I'm just wondering, like clear-cutting, do we have a lot of it's already too late, but what we do have, what are we doing to preserve that? And I guess what are we doing about coal?
Yeah, so a couple things, Willie. So thank you for that. And yeah, there is a focus in our government on healthcare, but I don't want to give the impression that there's not a lot happening in the government every single day. We have a very, very strong cabinet for sure, but we have a number of Nova Scotians working for the province that are dedicated to serving Nova Scotians and moving this province forward. So we're focused on healthcare. We're focused on paying for fixing healthcare. So our economy, the traditional industries will always be part of our economy in this province. Fishing, farming, forestry, they will always be part of our economy. We'll add new parts to our economy through technology and innovations and other aspects to it, but they'll always be part of it. So now we have to talk about responsible forestry. There's always going to be trees growing in Nova Scotia, and they're going to be cut down, but we have to do it responsibly. So we know we have the Leahy report, which talks about responsible forestry, and there will be, you didn't say it, but I just want to say it just in case, because it will be on the minds of some people. Some people say you got to ban clear cuts. And when you do things like that, you might have unintended ramifications. What if you have a stand of trees that's diseased and it needs to be clear cut? So there's different forestry practices. So what I want you to know is Minister Rushton working with the department, working with the industry to make sure we have sustainable forestry, that they can always be part of our economy. That's really important. Ecological forestry, these things, we want to make sure we're doing that. You mentioned getting off coal. We burn a lot of coal in this province. We burn in between some of the Atlantic provinces most of the coal that's burnt in the country is burnt right here. We know that burning coal to provide energy is something that has to stop. There's legislated deadlines that it has to stop. But we passed legislation, so we know that we need to move away from coal. Moving away from coal is part of our climate change plan that we've published, and it's definitely part of our legislated goals. But and to do that, we need to look and say, what does our energy grid look like in 2030 and beyond? What are our sources of energy? Of course, wind would be part of that. Hydro would be part of that. What else is part of that, right? Gas is, what are the other options to make sure we get our grid right? We move it away from coal and we move it to a more sustainable future that's better for our environment. So we're committed to that. Yes, there's an incredible focus on healthcare, but very, very talented cabinet of ministers and people working in the civil service that care about this province, that care about the future of the planet. So thank you for raising that a very important question.
Thank you, Premier. Let's come back to the topic of healthcare next. We're going to go to Stephen from Halifax, who has a question about the nursing bonus. Go ahead with your question, Stephen.
Hi, Mr. Houston. How are you tonight?
Stephen, thanks for joining us.
I guess I just want to talk about it. I think it's a great idea that you're giving a $10,000 bonus to the nurses and then the $10,000 retention bonus, which is great. But I have firsthand knowledge. My daughter graduated from Dalhousie last year in nursing. Gets a job at the IWK, can only be hired as a casual, but works full-time hours. So for the past, 10 months, she's been casual. For most of it, had no benefits. And only recently got a longer-term position, but still considered casual. There's more than just her that graduated in Dow last year that are working at the IWK. But because they're casual, they don't qualify for the bonus or the retention bonus because they're not full-time. I just think when we're trying to retain nurses and fix the healthcare system, we missed out on those nurses, young nurses that are entering our system because those are the ones who are going to maybe go somewhere else. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, thank you, Stephen. And we don't want them to go somewhere else. We want them to stay right here. We have somewhere in the range of 1,500 or 1,600 nursing vacancies in the province. We need to fill those vacancies to improve the quality of life for the nurses that are in the system, so they can get vacation, so they can get a break. Right? We know when they're on shift, so we know the need to hire and to retain. So the thank you bonus was a way of recognizing those that are working in the system. Now, let me say this, our heart's in the right place with that bonus for sure, and we absolutely strive for perfection on government policy. Sometimes you don't get it exactly perfect, and you need to kind of recognize that and kind of move towards it. So when we first announced this, immediately we recognized a couple of misses, let's say. One right off the top was, those that are working in the system but are on maternity leave. That was just a miss. So we clarified that right away. So we're also working on additional clarifications. And what I would say to you, to your specific point here, is we're looking for those places where somebody, possibly your daughter, wants to work full time, but hasn't. There's not a full time job available, but she's providing an important service to Nova Scotians. So, if there was not a full time job and she was wanting to work full time, then we're looking to see how we can clarify around that. But I also will say, depending on how that falls, and that's an active file, and Stephen, please email me with the specifics at Premier at novascotia.ca, and we'll look at that very specific. These are oftentimes very individual situations. So please, if we can clarify something, we will on that. And we're also looking at making sure that those casual nurses, I think you said she has a full-time opportunity now, but that they have an opportunity to commit to work in the system, might be eligible for the retention bonus on the back end. But just a long way of saying we're looking at additional clarifications. We don't want to discourage discourage anyone. We didn't do this to discourage anyone. We legitimately want to say thank you to those that have been providing care to Nova Scotians through some very difficult times. This is our opportunity to say thank you with a meaningful financial contribution. It's not meant to alienate. It's not meant to discourage. So where we can clarify, we certainly will. But certainly, please feel free to email those specific things. And thank you for raising that. It's a really important question for sure.
Thank you, Premier. We're coming up at the end of our hour now. Unfortunately, I do see several people still on the line with questions, and I do apologize that we weren't able to get to all of them again this evening. Again, the conversation does not have to end here. You can email your questions, your comments, your suggestions to nstownhall@novascotia.ca. Premier, do you have any closing comments to end us off?
Yeah, sure. Well, let me thank you, folks. I really appreciate it. An hour goes quick for sure, but look, what a great discussion. Healthcare, roads, environment. We definitely covered a lot of ground there, and I've got a few takeaways for sure, and maybe a couple of opportunities. Maybe we get Sandra's daughter back here practicing medicine, and get some other people working in the system. So these are great for me. Listen, I take your comments to heart. I take your suggestions to heart, and I'll go away and think about this, as will my team. But I really enjoy this. Thank you so much for making time, for joining us. It's really helpful. It's really helpful for me. Obviously, we're focused on healthcare, and we will continue to focus on healthcare. But as was pointed out, there's lots of parts to the administration of government and serving Nova Scotians, and we want to make sure we have our eye on the ball on those as well. So, thanks for joining us tonight. Send your questions through on email. Reach out anytime. We'll do our absolute best to get back to you. But hope everyone has a great evening. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Appreciate it.